Pexels is a free stock photo and video platform. Most people imagine like yourself or a marketer, designer, they come and they download photos or videos to make something out of it, right? So we are a search engine for them. But at the core, we're actually a marketplace. We have the people who come download, but we have the people who upload and donate or give their content away for free for people to use. And there is a big complexity that is added into this marketplace where the value that both the supply and demand get is not equal. When you think about Pexels on our end, if you're the person who's coming to download, you immediately get value. You get that photo or video that you wanted that is going to enable you to do something bigger with it. Most people don't just get a photo, but like it helps them tell a story. It helps them bring an idea to life. You get the value right away. But the contributor on the other side, what value did they get? It doesn't come from that one interaction. It comes from the scale of the platform. And then foundationally to all of this is obviously like, how do we pay for all this to make sure that it happens, which is how do we monetize the company to cover the expenses? Not that we're like our goal is not to make the most amount of money. Our goal really is to empower the world to design and to create freely. That's really what we do. But still, money is an important aspect of how we can make sure that happens. So there's three kind of strategies that we end up having to have. Each one of them has its different challenge. For the person who's downloading the content, our challenge is not to convince them about the content. You're looking for a photo of a black horse. We give you a stunning photo of a black horse. I don't have to convince you to take it. It's free. It's there. It's easy in a way. But our challenge there is distribution. How do I make sure that every time that Pedro is searching for a specific image or a video, it either shows up that Pexels is the response to that, or you find it directly on Pexels. So how do we distribute the content is the main challenge when it comes to that. Then on the contributor side, the challenge, which I kind of already alluded to, is value. So how do we deliver value to the contributors, and how do we create more value for them to keep coming back and sharing more of their content with the world, like around the same mission? And then balancing those two things out, which are different strategies. There's stuff that meets in the middle, but reality, some of that is very different. Then you also have to balance, like, let's make sure we make money to be able to deliver value and help them with the distribution of the content. When I joined, Pexels was already at 20-some million sessions monthly. So like there was a lot of momentum. There was a lot of stuff that already was kind of built around this for us to be able to leverage. One of the things that I think, again, important to understanding how Pexels works and how our SEO really works is that it's not content marketing type of SEO. So it's not generating blogs. It's not creating content that solves a problem. It's very much programmatic SEO at scale. So every piece of content that gets uploaded into Pexels gets tagged. We identify what's in the photo and what's happening in there, and those get indexed by Google. So we can create search pages. We can create the page for the photo itself, and that's how the bulk of the pages gets created. Now, knowing that also gives you the idea that like content and the building of that content library was one of the most impactful things that we did. So in the time that I joined Pexels, I think we were like at 1.some million pieces of content. We grew that exponentially through a lot of the community work that we do and delivering that value that we kind of talk about the contributors to build a library of close to 4 million pieces of photos and videos. So that component of having the supply, then we can actually showcase the demand, was one of the core strategies that we did to that. And then when I joined, the first hire that I made was a head of SEO. I understand SEO on the content marketing level more than the technical and programmatic level that this required. So also hiring that person was the lever of growth that took this. So like, then he kind of built an audit, and growth, there's no silver bullet to any of this. There was a lot of like, once he came in, there was a lot of different things that we optimized. There's a lot of image search, video search that we weren't leveraging, that like we started using more. And I mean, technical solutions to that, maybe not the answer that everyone is kind of, but yeah, that's been the journey. There's still a lot to do. We're translated into 28 different languages, and most of the focus has been in English right now. So there's still a lot of work that we have ahead of us on localization to match our localization strategy on the content that we're getting. In the past 2 years, I think that the focus that we can say was not necessarily on things that were already working, but there was a lot of opportunity in experimentation and optimizing the mechanics that were already in place. One of those examples would be like the onboarding for contributors and value delivery for contributors. That was something that we were seeing a high drop-off rate in the activation metrics, like how many people we were losing in the first 4 weeks of engagement. So there was stuff that we could already work there that was the biggest opportunity. In the past year and a half, probably we did a lot of that work in I mean, we kind of went from like trying to get the numbers out of my head, but we doubled the retention rate from after 4 weeks of a contributor who joined. So like a pretty big change into that. And that gave us a foundation of like, okay, like now we have something that is fixed a bit of the leaky bucket that we had in terms of that component. Now we're looking at some of the bigger bets in terms of growth that we can do. So it's no longer just smaller optimizations that we want to be doing. I mean, there's still a lot of that happening on a day-to-day perspective with lifecycle marketing and product optimizations. But there are bigger bets in play to find new avenues to deliver more value to the contributor outside of the mechanics that already exist. Data is great, but it also comes with a curse. Like if you imagine 40 million sessions, that's already 40 like per month. That's already a vast amount of data. How many images they scroll through, how many searches they did, like it becomes billions and billions of data points that it's like, okay, like what do we look at? And I think that it causes a bit of the confusion. So for me, what I've always tried to do with data is kind of taking a step back to understand like what's the measurement plan of the business? Like if this is the strategy, how do you measure that strategy? What are the key KPIs within that? And what are the KPIs? What are the targets that you have to hit on it? Like you kind of have to know like, am I in the right direction? Am I lower than I want to be hitting? Like benchmarks type of things. And then also what are the segments that are important to look at within that data? So basically building a dashboard that tells you like what's going well and not, but also being able to very quickly segment into like, what are the things that like, if something is broken, you're more likely to find the information within there, right? So I think that's one of the key components. Now, how, like the question kind of there, like how do you identify opportunities for growth? I mean, one, starting from that point and understanding your whole business, it can kind of start giving you paths into where to look at data and how to do deeper segmentation. But I think that for me, it's that paired with like, how do you map out the mechanics of the business? In our case, for example, we try to map out the contributor journey to understand really what are the things that they do like within a month, within 2 months, and understanding like where do we drop off, where do we increase, like what are the type of users who don't drop off, and then we can start digging deeper. And I think that like the questions need to start coming from a higher level strategic understanding to then dig deeper into the data. So like what's the insight that takes you there? But even the most important piece of that is the data is going to tell you what's happening, not why it's happening, right? So like, don't stop at the what is happening and just be like, this is what we fix and go at fixing it. But like, what is it that is causing that change to happen? And I think that that's when combining qualitative and quantitative data is what brings true insight into like what the strategy should, or like what the hypothesis is going to be, whether you build it as a company strategy or you focus it in an area like, hey, here's a growth team for the next 2 months, prove the hypothesis or not, and do a learning agenda to understand how that could empower the rest of the team to do. And the clarity that brings, like not just for you as like leading growth or understanding where to go, but like the clarity that it gives to the team and the company overall to know like, this is why we're working on something specific. Like, right? Like, because everyone, you know, like at a company, you're going to have everyone kind of voting for their own things that are tightest to their goal or closer to what they're doing. Like it's true pain point for them. But now, hey, we're looking at a higher level of like, where's the biggest opportunity we can find within this, like, hopefully it's a loop, of value and the mechanic that it works, like the mapping of the engine. And I think that's it's amazing clarity to give the team. What we calculate, like what we see as a contributor and what we see as a user are very different things. The way that we measure users and the people who come download is more closely related to sessions, because the session is the one that adds the value to the contributor. How many sessions you're coming to, it shows the contributor how many times the content has been seen, downloaded, but it's also directly correlated with the revenue that we can build is to the session. So we measure that on that perspective. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, we measure more on the content. So how much approved content acquired do we have? And we've tried to look at, especially when it comes to this number of cost per acquisition, we've tried to look at the cost per acquisition per image or per video. And averages suck in a way, like, especially when it comes to that, where like it can be $5, be $10, imagine whatever number, but the value of an image is quite subjective and quite different. Like one image that is coming, that is high quality, that fills in a content gap, might have a higher value than an image of leaves. Like maybe we already have a lot of photos of leaves, right? Like we love more photos of leaves. I'm not saying no, but like in terms of volume and quantity, like how much is the incremental value that image has towards the business? I think that's the place where we want to get to. So like I kind of mentioned that we hired a data scientist. That's where we would love to get to understand the value of an image, but not the average value of images or videos, but like how do we start measuring a little bit better of that? And then I think that's the type of number that can help you be more strategic into where to go and what type of content to get and a different lens. Versus I think that this would be a cool number to have. Would it give us a different strategic lens on how we do? We still operate very independently from Canva. Like we have our own team, we have our own goals, we kind of build together. We obviously take a lot of influence into what's Canva doing. But where I say like I don't know if it had a lot of influence is because I think the missions for both companies were so close together that when the acquisition happened, it was like, hey, like we're both empowering the world to design. We're doing it like as Pexels by providing free ingredients for that to happen on Canva and outside of Canva. Canva's giving you, I mean, incredible tools plus the ingredients plus a bunch of other things for you to make that happen. So we kind of are the raw material for some of the design to come to life, and we do that freely. So like it enables a big percentage or good enough percentage of all the free Canva users to be able to create stuff freely on the platform as well, because all the content that comes from Pexels to Canva is free. Now, I mean, we take advantage of the tools that Canva has, their marketing stack, their tech stack, the engineer stack, stuff that like at a 40-person team we wouldn't be able to have. So obviously, like I think it accelerated us in that perspective. But I think that for me personally, like the most important piece has been like inspirational and how aspirational Canva is. Like just working with like the founders and the leadership team from Canva, like their vision is so big. Like it's not small optimizations. It's like really the future of like how design can work in the world. I actually think that the AI is going to simply make Canva more powerful and enhance their competitive moat. Canva has been working on AI for the past couple of years harder. So I do think that Canva is going to have a competitive advantage there because of that. They have already launched an enterprise product. They've already have business. So like I think that there's a lot of momentum there that is simply going to help them do that. And lastly, like if Canva hasn't done it yet on the AI perspective, there's a marketplace within it as well. So like there's apps within Canva that you can specifically do for specific AI things. So again, they're kind of bringing all of it together to make it one of the things that we consciously decided actually not to do, which was accept AI generated content into the platform. We built a very big community of contributors who are sharing the world as it is through their lens from all these places. And our mission is to show the world as it is, right? Like, so like when you're searching for like coffee in Turkey, it'd be really cool that like it comes with like the Turkish like idea of like, I don't even know how you call it, but like the sand where they kind of make that like very thick espresso versus for me in Colombia, like if I'm searching coffee, maybe I would want to see the coffee zones and the donkey, like kind of doing that. And maybe in Europe, coffee is all about like, right. So like, I think that there's that strategic piece that we want to make sure that stays true to the world and we show the world as it truly is. And we're really enabling our community to do that. So we made a conscious decision not to compete with our own contributors in creating that content there. Whereas other platforms have gone the other way, and now they're filled with AI content because it can be generated much faster. Then from the operations perspective, I think that like where AI is going to be the most impactful for us is understanding what is in a photo. So like, I actually don't know if vector-based search is AI or language models. I don't know what the technicality of that, but I think that that's massive, where before we had to rely on humans basically tagging the photo of what it is, like an example of a church. I've been giving this in the past couple of days, but before you took a photo of a church and I would just say church, rock, building, cross. Now, like, it actually can tell you like what church it is, where it's located, what plaza it's in, like what angle the photo is. So like, I think that it's going to enhance the way that the content can be discovered overall, which I think is going to be incredible. I think we've always had like since I joined, we've always had a culture of building things, and it came from the founders. Like, there were 2 developers who built Pexels and just started hiring people and building cool things. And there was never a fear of failing. So I think that there was a lot of enablement into that. I think that where I think I hope/think played a big role was being a bit more strategic on how we do that. I think that a lot of the time it came from like a lot of ideas all over the place on what we should experiment, versus kind of going back to like when you ask like, where do we get like the data, like the insight from the data, and like what specific thing can we improve, so that way we can reiterate on the process, and the learnings are valuable. You want to make sure that the learning that you have there is applicable to the next experiment, so you can compound on learning, not just on results. But I think that like when you want to just test everything, a little bit of shiny object syndrome, like you do a lot of testing, which is fantastic, but you don't get the compound effects of the learning or the growth.
So for whoever is actually like trying to get things out of the ground, I think combining those 2 things would mean having a clear growth strategy. So mapping out an objective, and every single idea that you're going to run or try to validate is actually pointing on that one single direction before trying to solve every single problem.
It's always about like a little bit of the marketing of the idea as well. How do you present it? What's the audience? What are they trying to get? You have to be really good at understand the inputs and the foundations. And I think that like that means like you can be the best SEO person technically, or you can be the best person who knows how to manage ads. But if you don't understand the customer, what you're trying to sell to them, you're not doing much with it. So like you kind of have to be able to combine that. So like I think that skills from that to understand that, I mean, there's a lot of like psychology and reading that you do, but data analytics and qualitative research, like how do you combine those things to bring insight that is more relevant and strategic to it? The other piece is the tactical work, which depending on what you're trying to build on, normally you start to become very good at something. For me, like I started in advertising, I went deep into that. You learn like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Google ads, and like from there you start building a bit of a framework of what you understand. But you can do that with anything: conversion rate optimization, lifecycle marketing. I think that like especially things that are closer to the point of sale is going to make it easier for you to like learn and be closer to that number to like understand how to optimize for it. But then you start kind of expanding into like what other tactics complement each other for me to be able to be like the right growth person. You can't be a growth person and be like, all I do is advertising, because when you go, like you need to be adaptable to whatever the data tells you that the need is happening. It might not be in advertising. It might be in way down in like retention, that advertising is going to do very little for you. And then the third piece is the strategy, which is like kind of that holistic understanding of the tactics and how they all work together, and how do you combine them with the inputs and the foundations, and putting that together, and probably positioning of the product or the brand like also plays a role into that. And I think that you kind of have to learn into those 3 things. Probably starting with tactics is the easiest way to start learning, and kind of deviate up into like the foundations and the strategy side. I think that if you don't take yourself too seriously, I think there's one that is, someone says that is you have to be opinionated, but don't hold the opinions too strongly. We have a pipeline of experiments under the same North Star metrics. So if one doesn't work, the one we had the highest confidence, like applying the ICE, highest confidence, like easiest to do type of thing, we kind of start going through the list. But applying the learnings, like I think that if it simply failed and you didn't learn why it failed, then like you also didn't do the job correctly. Like you want to fail is fine, but like what did we learn to fail? And like maybe you don't have to know exactly, but like can you put together hypotheses of why it failed and then prove against that smaller hypothesis under a bigger hypothesis to understand this is how we failed, why we failed, yes, no, and then it can help you go into that. Or again, like can you do any qualitative research to understand like what could be the why behind the failure and understanding that. For the first part of the question, like what happens, honestly, I think depends on what it is that the growth metric was at the time. Like for example, we don't have right now a growth function happening at the moment. We kind of like spark them up whenever it's needed, and then we do a lot of experimentation, and then we pass it on to a team. So the onboarding, as an example, was something that we kind of led with like a lot of growth and like maybe in a vacuum, not involving a lot of people, figuring out that it was working. And then once we had the insight, when we had those things happening, we then pass it to the team that's focused on the contributor experience and be like, hey, like here's the insights, here's the learnings, here's the process we have put into place. Like now actually make it operational. What the funniest thing is that like people are very focused on learning for failures, but everyone was just happy with the success. Everyone's like, we won, but we don't know why. So I actually think that like there needs to be more focus on people understanding why it worked, because it could also be luck, right? Like it could not be proving the assumption that you're trying to prove. So I think that there's a thing there that like we all get excited about a win, but then it is like, why did we actually win? And can you go back to another experiment to be like, is there something different that like could be disproving? I mean, it depends on the goal, it depends what you're trying to do, but it's something that I've noticed that a lot of the time, all the case studies aren't failures and like how it led to something, but no one looks at the final success and why did we actually succeed?